what fuels your imagination?
The minimalists.
Would you care to elaborate?
I surprised myself by always being fascinated by people that work in a very minimalistic way, because it triggers my fantasy. It kind of goes beyond the actual words to describe something. And I want to become a minimalist when I get older, but I'm not. I went to College of Art and Design in Stockholm. We had short classes in glass design. Twice a year, the whole class went down to the kingdom of glass. There were 30 glass factories down here. It was a dream to get an offer to work for a glass factory. During one of those visits, one of the very well-known designers asked if I could become his assistant. So that's how it started. And then I started to experiment. There must be a way beyond the traditional ways of working glass. And I thought, sand, that has been used for casting metal for thousands of years. It was such a discovery to be able to be free with the material, to use my hands, to use my fingers. I don't think I would work with glass without having discovered this possibility of casting in sand. I must say that my priority has always been to design for the factory, not to express myself. We've been working together for so long, everybody knows by now what to do, but I do know the capacity of each individual, so I know that they are at the right position. I have to get the team together before we start and tell them what I want, and I want them to be really at their best. But also I want to create a feeling of competition without actually pushing them, give them a goal, to make the biggest one.
I love that. Around the storytelling of your vessels.
The ships. Oh, no, they're different. They're all about finding out what's going on beyond the horizon. You see, I hate glass in a way. I hate the beauty of it. I hate when it becomes like jewelry, seductively immediate, because ugly is more interesting than beauty. I like what's behind the surface, inside the glass, and the fact that those stories are gone forever.
Talk a little bit about these underworlds.
We are so fascinated by space. Spend so much money in order to get people out to Mars or other planets. But we know so little about what's going on in the water. So those blocks has become a way to describe what a fragile surface we actually live on without knowing the wonders or the danger that's going on in the deep waters. I want to make that thin surface that we live on scary. It kind of is starting to fall apart or fall into destruction. Actually, they're very political, those places, but beautiful. There is constantly things to discover. That's the essence of life, to explore and see if it works or not. It's like food. It's not like a joyful thing. It's something you have to do. That's the greatest satisfaction I could feel, when you started something and you did dare to start it and you can see it's leading somewhere. That's a very nice feeling.
Good evening. and welcome to the Corning Museum of Glass. I'm Carol White, President and Executive Director, and it's my pleasure to welcome those here in the museum's amphitheater hot shop, as well as viewers who have joined our live stream Connected by Glass event from afar. Those of you who are here in the museum will have just walked through our courtyard lobby, where we have a gorgeous display of works on view and for sale, representing the unique glass art by the singular artist and designer, Bertil Vallien, whose stunning creations are represented in both our shops and in the museum's permanent collection. Tonight, we celebrate 60 years of creation and glass artistry from the incomparable Swedish master. While we are disappointed that Bertil was not able to join us here in Corning as originally planned, he urged his colleagues from Kosta Boda to make the trip. And we are delighted to welcome our Swedish guests as they honor 6 decades of collaboration between Kosta Boda and Bertil, a collaboration that has produced some of the world's finest crystal art and art in glass. During his long career, Bertil has been both innovator and mentor. He pioneered numerous glassmaking techniques through his artistic practice, while simultaneously creating unique and popular commercial glass collections. Bertil is perhaps best known for the technique he pioneered anew and perfected in the 1980s, sand casting. After preparing a mold of an object or shape pressed into clean sand, molten glass is ladled from the furnace directly into the prepared mold, after which glass or compatible objects are placed. Can you hear me now? How about if I move it a little closer to my mouth? There we go. I just moved closer. How's that? Bertil is perhaps best known for the technique he pioneered anew and perfected in the 1980s, sand casting. After preparing a mold of an object or shape pressed into clean sand, molten glass is ladled from the furnace directly into the prepared mold, after which glass or compatible objects are placed, giving the appearance of floating in the solid glass object once they are annealed. Here at the museum, we are especially grateful to Bertil for the impact he has had on a generation of glassmakers working in cast glass. As our project to expand our glassmaking studio nears its completion, we are committed to providing the resources, training, and equipment that will ensure the glass casters of the future can hone their craft in North America as never before, following in the footsteps that Bertil first made in the sand. And now on to tonight's program. Bertil wanted to make sure you heard from him directly, so I'm pleased to say we'll begin with a video produced by his team just for this moment. Following that, and streaming live from Kosta, Sweden, Bertil's son, Hampus Vallien, will share insights into Bertil's storied career spent in creative pursuit. Here in the amphitheater hot shop, Cecilia Kling, Chief Assistant to Bertil since 2005, will be working with our hot glass team to make signature sandcast companion heads. These Bertil Vallien designs have been released for our team to produce for this event. Each piece features a unique message, and a limited supply of these special works are available through the shops, in person and online, in celebration of this occasion. For those attending virtually, representatives from Kosta Boda and our shops will be answering your questions in the live stream chat. And now, without further ado, a video message from Bertil.
Starman is the cocky title of the show that I'm doing right now in several places, celebrating my 60 years as a glass artist. And you know what? I have been lucky. I've been lucky with my health. My body has been acting very well for me. and I've been trying to keep it in good shape. But last week, it came to a point where it said, no. My heart started to protest and some other problems. So I'm really, really sorry for not being able to attend my show and the events in Corning. We have been so much looking forward to this event. We have been communicating with the glass blowers in Corning and all the people that have been working with the show, preparing for the lecture, preparing for all the festivities. So it's such a disaster that I just can't come. My doctors have forbidden me to fly. And it's so sad not to meet you all, old friends and new friends in Corning, this fantastic place that I think more than other places can be called the Mecca of glass in the world. I was there for the first time in the late 70s and gave a speech. I was young then, and I remember the main speaker at that conference was the Dutch artist Coupier. And he was really old. I think he had to have a person supporting him at the podium, but he gave an excellent speech. And my speech at Corning, I felt now I am in the same position, but I was very much looking forward to do it without any support. I really am so sorry for not being able to attend all the events that have been planned for me in Corning.
Bertil, why are you always wearing a hat?
Pure vanity. I unfortunately started to lose my hair very young, and I think I'm more beautiful with a hat. But nowadays, I use them also to indicate or separate the two professions I have. Being a designer, or then I wear my black hat. This one. Then I'm a designer, commercial designer for Kosta Boda, designing for production. And when I wear my red hat, then I am the artist. I really try to separate them. But at the exhibition at Corning, I'm showing both. I'm showing things that are design work, but also the more exclusive, unique pieces.
Which role is the most important for you?
I like them both. I really do. It's a privilege to work with all the skilled people in the factory, and knowing that I'm doing a good job in order to keep the factory running. That's a very fun and good thing to do. But closest to my heart, of course, is my artwork.
Hmm? Yes, Bertil, you are a very productive artist, and you have been so for 6 years. Mm-hmm. I have come into your studio several times, and there is always something new going on. Mm-hmm. So my question now is, which is your latest piece? What have you been working on recently?
The latest series I'm working on and continue to work with right now, I have titled the Hidden Code.
Hidden code.
The Hidden
You
Code.
have to explain this.
Yeah, it's funny because I can tell you exactly how it happened, why I started. I went to the Biennale in Venice a couple of months ago, and it's overwhelming. And on the flight back, I was sitting with my little notebook, and did some drawings, and tried to find out what made an impact. And amongst all the things I saw a small selection of photographs by a French artist, a female artist, Claude Cahun is her name. I always loved her work. She made some fantastic self-portraits dressed as a man, 1923. And she has been with me all the time, and I've been using her in some of my work before. Anyhow, in this little exposé of like 6 or 10 old photographs, there was one where she was dressed in a corset.
Really?
And on the plane, I was starting to draw her or objects with a corset. And I just loved them. So when I came home, I immediately started to make them. And it has so far resulted in about 10 different pieces. Some of them on the wall and some of them freestanding. But they all have this leather corset that is hiding something or changing something. And I think the contrast between the rough sand-casted glass and this bandage that is very tightly wrapped around what could be the neck or the waist. That has given the idea to my latest work.
We have been talking about hidden codes, but there was another thing I was thinking of, and that was the boats. When I say Bertil Vallien to someone, they immediately say, oh, the artist with the boats. And so it has been since the 1980s, as far as I remember. And I often get the question, why does he make so many boats?
The boat is very dear to me. First of all, it was actually when I started with sand casting, there were so many failures, things that went wrong. I didn't have cutting and grinding equipment. It was a very hard period, difficult to sell. The success became obvious with the boats. I made a show at Heller Gallery in 1980, I think, in New York, and I sold things for the first time. So that's, for that commercial reason, it's an important object for me. But of course, the boat is just a wonderful metaphor. It's amazing because if you make a long tapered piece and taper it in both ends, people immediately say, boats, it's a boat. Could be an abstract form. So it's very easy to relate to that shape. But I think, it's the first vessel of transportation. And the fact that 1,000 years ago, the horizon was the end of the world. So one way of kind of securing a safe trip beyond the horizon was to load the ship with the person that died and his belonging and what he would need on the other side, so to speak. That's that fascinates me. I mean, that action has been made in many cultures, especially in Scandinavia, but also in Egypt and other cultures, that you give the person a second chance. But also the fact that the boat is a world detached from the rest of the world. It's like a country, dominion completely in its own right. The only thing that actually protects the content is from the catastrophe is the fragile hull of the boat. So when you place something in a boat, you can tell a story and you immediately, without thinking about it, you know it's an important journey to other worlds.
Your boats are, as you said, like containers, and you fill the boat with messages by using different symbols. So, for instance, I have noticed heads, ladders, etc., etc. And it seems as if you are creating a new story in each piece of art. Is that so?
Mm-hmm. I have an alphabet of signs and metaphors and symbols. As you say, it could be the stairs, the ladder, the keyhole. The house is very important for me, the never-ending spiral. I have the letter A and the letter E. And I listened to an interview with David Bowie that interested me, because when he wrote his very strange texts or lyrics to a space odyssey, he told how the text came about. He said that he wrote his favorite words on small pieces of paper. He just wrote all his favorite words, words that was important to him. Then he took all the small pieces of paper, threw them out on the table and read. So he did choose the words, but the meaning was created by chance, God, faith. In a way, when I'm lazy, I'm using that. I just use all those symbols, mix them, and I am surprised. I myself am surprised what a different story they create. Mm-hmm.
And also for me, seeing the boats, each boat is creating its own story for me, which is not identical with your story, probably.
I hope not.
It's so individual, and that is fascinating, I think, really. Well, Bertil, we have been talking about glass like a very transparent material and the light and everything. And all of a sudden you started make black, opaque glass. How did this happen? And what do you appreciate with this kind of glass?
mistakes are important. And the fact that I nowadays actually love to do black pieces is started with a big mistake. I was going to have a show in New York, Hella Gallery, important exhibition. We worked hard. We made all the molds, in sand. We painted all the inclusions. And at 12 o'clock, a Friday, everything came to a pivot. The kilns were up to the right temperatures. The pickup oven was up. The annealers were up. Everything was just perfect. The first ladle that came out of the furnace looked not so good. It had an oily, funny look to it. And it was a catastrophe. So I had to make a decision to stop or to continue. And with kind of a daredevil's courage, we did the whole casting. We did cast 25 pieces, knowing that this is not going to work. It's not going to work. But we did it. And, it was a very funny feeling to cast pieces that you know that were not going to be good. We did put in all the inclusions as we had planned, but they disappeared. And after 3 weeks, when we opened up the annealer, all the pieces were pitch black. Pitch black. All the things that I have been stating that I love about glass, the transparency, the way of capture things inside the glass, were gone. Instead, they became three-dimensional sculptures with a very obvious black surface. Kind of nice, with a little bit of an iridescent feel to it. I just loved them. I just loved them. And I did the show, and I called the show Desert Flower. Desert Snow. Anyhow, what happened? Everybody was wondering, can we do it again? What happened? Nobody knew until one of my helpers, kind of crying, confessed. She said, Bertil, it's actually your fault. It's your fault because your handwriting is so bad. I have to tell you this before I end the story. In order to make a nice blue glass, you use cobalt oxide. Cobalt oxide is like a virus. It's like a bacteria. So if you put cobalt oxide on your thumbnail and blow it into a ton of glass, it turns blue.
Oh.
So the favorite blue we usually do, I use 18 grams of cobalt oxide, and that becomes a perfect blue. Now, for this particular casting, we said, let's add on 2 grams. So, a total amount of 20 grams cobalt oxide to a ton of glass would be just right. Anyhow, she said, Bertil, your handwriting, you wrote 2,000 grams. not 20 grams.
So it went
So the
black.
best way of making a nice black glass is to use 2 kilos, 2,000 grams of cobalt oxide. It's an expensive way of doing it.
Do you still keep that recipe?
No, there are much cheaper and simpler ways to do black glass.
Are you still making black glass?
Yes, quite a lot. Now and then. I can't say that it's very popular amongst my...
That was wonderful. I love that story about the black glass. It was lovely to hear it again. And now it's my pleasure to introduce Hampus Vallien, the son of world-famous glass artist Bertil and Ulrika Vallien. With his wife Emilia, Hampus owns and runs Vida Museum, an art gallery, one of Sweden's largest privately owned art museums. It permanently shows large collections of Bertil and Ulrika's art and temporary exhibitions of contemporary Scandinavian art and design. Hampus, thank you so much for joining us from afar tonight.
Thank you, Carol. Thank you very much for allowing me to be with you tonight. Of course, Bertil, as he has expressed already, is very sorry that he can't participate. He is prohibited strictly by his doctors to fly, as you know. Had I known that this situation would come up, I would have been very happy to be with you in person this night, but this is the best we can do under the circumstances. I am sitting now in Stockholm, Sweden. It's 20 minutes till 1 o'clock in the night. If I look tired, that might explain the thing. I think also Bertil, he has been working as an artist for 70 years almost, out of which 60 years has been in Kosta, with Orrefors, Kosta, Boda. So maybe he deserves some rest sometime. I will tell you a little bit about my background and how it is to, or how it has been to grow up in a family with 2 famous artists, Bertil and Ulrika. And I will, of course, focus on Bertil. And I will talk a little bit about Bertil, not as an expert, but as his son, as a witness, a nearby witness of Bertil. I think we will show some pictures while I speak. Yes, there is Vida, the place we have talked about. I will not talk specifically about each picture, but I will comment on some of them, so they can kind of roll in the background as I speak. Of course, growing up in a very artistic family, and now you see the house where I grew up. That is the house where Bertil is at this moment, hopefully sleeping. It's located close to a small lake in the Glass Kingdom in Småland, Sweden. Growing up in an artistic family is a privilege, but it can also be quite dramatic. Some kids, they choose to follow what their parents do. Children of lawyers or doctors tend to be lawyers or doctors, or they do the opposite, perhaps as a choice of rebellion. Then perhaps I am one of the rebellions, because when I was a kid, I loved to play ice hockey and soccer, and my dream as a boy was to join the NHL, playing ice hockey. My parents, they were not into sports at all. At the age of 19, I joined the Swedish Air Force, and I graduated as a first lieutenant, and then I went to Stockholm to study. I went to law school, and thereafter I worked as a business lawyer for 20 years. So that is a background that is pretty far from art. However, the art has slowly caught up with me. I did spend more time at the museums and galleries, and slowly I started realizing that my parents were not just some strange hippies. You know, I grew up during the 1970s. Instead, I realized that they were really talented, admired artists and designers. And slowly I changed from being kind of ashamed of my parents. At least as a kid, you were kind of ashamed of your parents if they looked like my parents looked in the 70s. And I became more and more proud. It was a long process, though. So when I got the question if I was interested in taking over Boda Museum, I had to give it some thought, some very serious thought. Was I willing to change career? Was I willing to work with my parents and their art, take care of their collections? Well, it was a pretty big change of lifestyle. But I was encouraged to do that. And to cut the long story short, I completed the deal together with Emilia, my wife. So here we are today. So the rebellion sort of, the circle has been closed. I kind of couldn't get rid of my my early experience. I'm happy to have been raised by two great artists, and now I have ended up working with art. Now let me talk a little bit about my father. He was born 1938, north of Stockholm, in a very religious home. There were 6 kids, brothers and sisters, to my father. My father's father, my grandfather, he was a preacher in a local church, and he brought up his family in a strict religious way. And my father, he didn't like that. He distanced himself from this religious upbringing. He left home at the age of 15. So he was kind of also being rebellious in this aspect, something I can relate to. However, keep in mind that although not a practicing Christian, he has worked a lot with motives from the Bible. He has studied the Bible. He's an educated man. He knows a lot about religious symbols, and some of the greatest pieces of art he has created can now be found in churches. A masterpiece is, of course, the altar cabinet that can be found in the cathedral in Växjö, in the south of Sweden. It's about 12 feet high, and it's a magnificent piece. So his circle was closed as well, I think you can say. How did it start? When did Bertil discover that he wanted to be an artist? Well, he has told me that at an early age, at around 10 years old, he discovered he was very gifted at making drawings. And he made drawings of horses. I think you've seen some pictures of horses here. And girls like horses. So he was admired by the girls. They admired him when he made drawings of their favorite horse. He gave these drawings to the girls. So admiration is a very strong driving force for most of us, and absolutely for my father. And if you find out you have a talent that make people admire you, especially girls, if you're a boy, that is a very good starting point for a career. And I think that was the starting point for Bertil. So he went to Konstfack, which is the University for Arts, Craft and Design in Stockholm. He started studying there in 1957. He graduated 1961. He met my mother, Ulrika, during those years. He was a gifted student. He was awarded several scholarships, which made it possible for him to travel to the United States. He studied in California. He worked as a designer in a pottery in Los Angeles. My parents traveled to Mexico, Central America. That was very inspiring for both of them. And in 1963, 60 years ago, he got hired by Orfors glass factory, which eventually became part of the group of glass factories that is now Orfors, Kosta, Boda. That's the King of Sweden you can see there on the picture. He assisted. He has worked as an assistant to my father. He assisted him when he was sand casting a boat in Kosta. I was born 1965 in Orfors, in a small house, just a 5-minute walk from the glass factory. Bertil, he was very ambitious back in those days. He worked a lot. A working day in the glass factory starts at 7 o'clock in the morning. And sometimes he came home to have a quick dinner with us. Often he went back to the factory after dinner. Came home after we had fallen asleep. Despite that, he had time to spend with me and my younger brother, Marcus. Every summer we went out sailing for weeks. Every winter we took the car and we made a long drive going south through Germany to the Alps, to Austria, Switzerland, where we went skiing. When I look back at what he did when I was a kid, as I mentioned, that this is now we're talking late 60s and 1970s. He was still a pretty young guy then, but he was extremely versatile. He did works in not only glass, industrial design in glass, art in glass, ceramics, woodworks, blacksmith works. He was doing a lot. Kind of hard to understand how he had the time. And he had us kids. An interesting thing that you notice if you look at Bertil's old pieces is that already in the 60s, you find many of the symbols, many of the motifs that are famous and so typical for Bertil. he has used those throughout his career until today. And I think primarily of the boat, I think about the horse, and I think about the head. We heard Bertil talk about the boat a few minutes ago. And I'd like to add that, I mean, to me, he has explained the boat. Not only, I mean, of course, he likes boats. He spent time in canoes and rowboats and sailboats as a kid. But it's, I mean, the boat is so much more. The symbol of the boat, how ships have connected continents and cultures, how ships have made some of the most fantastic explorations and journeys possible. And the boat, as Bertil mentioned, it also shows how vulnerable we are. He spoke about the hull, you know, the hull, even if we're talking about a cruise ship that carries 1,000 people, or a tanker that carries tens of thousands of tons of oil, the hull is often not more than an inch or two thick. That is a very, that thin hull separates the ocean from the traveler. And should the hull break, then catastrophe is, of course, a fact. The horse, well, I already told you about the horse and the importance of being admired. I think my father is quite honest when he speaks about admiration, which started already when he was a young kid. That is an important driver for him. In addition, of course, the horse is like the ship. I mean, the horse has meant a lot to our civilization and transportation, communication. The horse is crucial for that throughout history. And of course, the anatomy of the horse has been admired throughout the years. Just think about Da Vinci and his sketches of horses. Finally, the head. Where does that come from? There's a true story that has fascinated my father for many years. And it is a story about a girl called Carolina. She grew up on an island just outside the Swedish east coast. She was born 1861. So this is way back. And one day when she was she was going home from her school. The school was on the mainland. She lived on an island, as I mentioned. It was cold winter day. She walked on the ice. She fell on the ice, hit her head, but it wasn't worse than she was able to walk home. And she complained about a headache, but she ate her dinner. She went to bed. She fell asleep. And she fell asleep for 30 years. The mother gave her 2 glasses of milk every day. Besides that, no one could communicate with her. And what is really fascinating is that after 32 years in that coma-like state, Carolina wakes up, and that is a big sensation. Doctors, priests, psychiatrists, they visit her, they interview her. And of course, she gets the question, do you remember anything about from these 32 years? Did you have any dreams? Could you visualize any images or thoughts from all these years? And her only reply was that because she was pretty clear in her mind when she woke up, She could talk, she could read. But as a response to this question, what do you remember from all these years? She said, all I can remember is the face of blue men. The face of blue men covered by ice. And I think you recognize that. That story has fascinated my father, and of course you can recognize the blue faces covered by glass. My father is really a great man, I have to say that. He's been a good dad as well. I'm not going to rate him as an artist, but many experts do. Andy McConnell, known from British BBC's Antiques Roadshow, he's considered to be one of the foremost experts on glass. He has repeatedly stated that he thinks Bertil Vallien is the greatest living glass artist in the world today. He is the number one. There may be some that are more famous, but Bertil's, his uniqueness is the fact that he works with so many aspects of glass. He can create super exclusive pieces of art like the $1 Million Boat, and at the same time make great non-complicated design of glasses for everyday life. That is very versatile and wide. And he's done that for 60 years. That's what makes Bertil the greatest among glass artists today. I shall finally just mention that recently, Bertil, together with myself and my brother, we have created a foundation for the purpose of supporting culture and art, and to continue to take care of the wonderful collections of Bertil and Ulrika's art that we have at Vida, and to continue to spread information about Bertil's and Ulrika's art to new generations all over the world. I think that that concludes my presentation. Thank you for listening. And once again, Bertil, I spoke to him a few hours ago, and the last thing he said, tell all the people in Corning, I love them. Thank you.
Thank you, Hampus. That was really lovely to hear your family's story from your perspective, and to hear at the end that you've established a foundation to perpetuate their memory and their life in art. And while you've been speaking, we've been enjoying this fabulous demonstration of glass making by the CMOG team and the Kosta Boda team. So let's have a round of applause for these amazing artists. And of course, everyone here in the audiences wishes Bertil a speedy recovery. We hope to see him here in Corning at some point soon. And I want to thank all of you for being here with us tonight. It has been an outstanding evening of glassmaking and camaraderie. And for those of you who joined us virtually, we welcome your presence as well. I wanted to let you know that also the recording of this live stream is going to be published to the museum's YouTube channel in just a few days. So if you'd like to watch this again and relive the experience, you're going to have an opportunity to do so. So thank you for joining us tonight, and have a good evening.